All right, thank you, brothers, for jumping in with me. Of course, this is Christopher Harris, man. I so appreciate all of these brothers that are on today. Today is Wednesday, July 6th, and literally all of us are kind of reeling from the news of what took place last night in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with Alton Sterling. It's been everything that the news has covered today. It's a sad commentary when somebody's life simply becomes a hashtag. So what I want to do is really quickly, you know, I literally reached out to all of these brothers that are on. There can be some others joining in with us and say, hey, man, we need to at least have a conversation. What does this conversation look like? What should we be thinking about? What should the church be doing? How should the church be thinking? As millennials, how should we be operating? We've got a couple brothers on here that have their hands on the pulse of young people as well. And all of us, most of us on this line are fathers, husbands, engaged to be married, you know, and so this is very close to all of us. As you can tell, also, all of us are African-American men. And so we're not going to project any way that we've got all the answers, number one. Number two, all of us represent, and well, not shouldn't say represent, but are part of multiple organizations. And what we're sharing today is not necessarily the view of those organizations, but it's us wrestling with this real issue. So let me just real quick introduce everybody. Pastor Ryan Brooks, who's right there on the screen, is the pastor of Vertical Church in North Carolina, a church planner of a multi-ethnic ministry where racial reconciliation, diversity is right there as a part of their major discussion almost every weekend. Things that he's wrestling with. He is a husband. He's a father of multiple children. Has been in ministry almost, how long? How many years, Ryan?
Probably full-time ministry, probably closer to 10 years now.
Yep, a decade. So he's going to lend his voice today to our conversation. Mike, say what's up to the people real quick, man.
How y'all doing? Mike Goodwin out of Columbia, South Carolina, stand-up comedian.
Yeah, Bowtie Comedy. He's also on the local Columbia newscast. What is it, weekly or a couple times a week?
Yeah, weekly. I do a word of the day. Also on my social media presence, I do a word of the day. Provide some education and some entertainment at the same time.
There you go. Mike is a graduate, a master's graduate of University of South Carolina. Formerly was a full-time guidance counselor in a number of private and public schools, as a husband, as a father of both a daughter and a son. And so he's going to lend his voice to this as well with some background and context for some of the dynamics of what it means to live in South Carolina, right there close to some of the issues that we were dealing with last year in Charleston. We've got Edward Stevens III, who lives in Memphis, Tennessee. He's currently on mute right now, but EH, say what's up to the people, man.
Hey, what's up? Ed Stevens III, affectionately known as Trey. Memphis, Tennessee, serve as executive pastor at Golden Gate Cathedral. Finishing up school right now at Baylor University down in Waco, Texas.
Yep. And he's an author. What's the title of the book again?
Brand new, Discovering the New Life in Christ. Amazon, all that good jazz. Yes, sir.
Yeah, y'all go get the book. Go get the book. Don't download the bootleg copy. Get the real copy. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, Brother James Cole, a native of the state of Florida, the youth advisor for the local NAACP chapter in Hillsborough County, and is also a radio host and an HBCU grad, has been involved with a number of also elected official campaigns, is a serial entrepreneur, and just a number of other hats that he wears. He leads a men's ministry at his local church, and we're just glad to have you on, Brother James.
Thanks a lot. The only one thing I'd like to add to it is I'm the former president and have been serving for about 7 or 8 years on the Sheriff's Black Advisory Council here in Tampa. And the only reason why I want to mention that is because one of the things that we require our members to do is to sit on the shooting advisory board. That means that anytime a law enforcement official fires his weapon, someone from our council is there to review what the rationale was as to why that weapon was fired. and I may be speaking from some of the experiences in that capacity.
No, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. So let's just jump into the conversation. For anybody that may be watching this, even on demand later on, there's not a real script. What you're gonna get here is real thoughts, some very raw frustrations. So here's the deal, brothers. Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Katherine Johnston, Sean Bell, Eric Gardner, Rakia Boyd, Amadou Diallo, Mike Brown, Kamani Gray, Kenneth Chamberlain, Travaris McGreal, Tamir Rice, Ayanna Stanley, Freddie Gray, and now Alton Sterling. Man, where do we go with this? Is it? Are we playing the race card? Is this the figment of our imagination? What's up? Where do we even start with this discussion?
Well, I'll start by first saying I'm not surprised, unfortunately. And I really feel that is a tragedy, that I'm a 40-year-old African-American male, and this doesn't surprise me. I feel like our life is not as valuable in terms of how we are perceived in society. And I'm concerned because I'm the father of an African-American son. I just was having a conversation about the 4th of July with my children, kind of running them through the timeline of 1767, 1776, and then talking about, well, we wasn't really whole. We were 3/5 of a person. So really, by the time that we were considered having all the rights and privileges, your grandmother was in high school in about 1965. So trying to explain that to a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old can be a bit challenging. And now having to explain another tragedy continues to, I guess, snowball the frustration.
Yeah, real quick, we got 2 more brothers that joined in on this call. Brother Dakar Middlebrooks is a millennial mastermind, a student of culture, an author, a commentator, a jester, a court jester. I'm just kidding about that last part. But a great thinker. And I'm glad he could be on. Dakar, say what's up to the people, man. We're recording.
Oh, man, I'm excited to be on with you guys. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm excited to really have this conversation because it's definitely needed. So I'm excited to be on.
And Dakar would have been on time with us, but literally you just saw another shooting in Atlanta.
Yeah, I was right there near Peachtree and near Piedmont, and there was a guy that got shot. I'm not even sure if the brother made it, but there was yellow tape around it. So I'm sure I'll look for the news to see that tonight. Wow.
And then we have Pastor Canton Jones is on with us as well. A pastor, a radio host, a music producer, an artist, a husband, a father. He himself has 3 sons and a daughter, pastoring a church that is non-traditional in all senses of the term and phrase. And I would love to have him, while we're on this call as well, lend his voice, even because he's reaching African-American young men in his church. So I want to definitely have him jump in and chime in on the call as well. What's up, Pastor CJ?
What's up, sir? I'm sorry, man. There's a lot going on. We're putting ACs in the church. We've been doing everything in the heat. So
important.
So they calling me back and forth. So I apologize, gentlemen, for being late. One thing Chris missed too, that he married my sister, so that's my brother-in-law.
Oh yeah.
And he's a good guy. We love him. I think we'll keep him. And so I'm honored to be on, man. It's a lot that I have to say, but I really want to just kind of hear from everybody else. Kind of still emotional about the situation and trying to wrap my head around how something like this keeps happening. to us, and what can we do about it? That's basically it. Not necessarily to go through the event itself and pick that apart. That's not the purpose. It's just how do we get our people from being in that situation?
Yeah. So with that said, let's because we only have a little bit of time, and it's a bunch of us on here. What's the solution, man? Are there solutions? Is there a fix to this? Because it keeps happening. It's the same script, right? What's the solution? Are there solutions? And I'm talking to everybody. Anybody jump in.
Well, yes. There's a solution. I think the African American male is frustrated. In this country, he is, and as a whole, and not necessarily as individuals. I know some people are accomplished, come from great homes, but as a whole, the African American male is frustrated in this country. He's trying to make ends meet, trying to make things happen, and a lot of times they don't have education. A lot of times you don't have the structure at home. And so you go out the streets, teach you one way, you think that's the way. Nobody's ever taught you the other way. And you go out there and you kind of, life just hits you in the face. And sometimes you catch up so late with other cultures. You catch up so late that by the time you really get it, man, you 45, 50 years old. You done did time, and you got war stories to tell young cats. And so how do we break that cycle? I feel like African American culture as far as church is Go
ahead. Let's go. Go ahead.
Our culture is not accepted. The African American culture is not accepted inside church. Our culture is most of it's borrowed. Our music is borrowed. We take white songs and remake them, make them our own, because our culture, our natural culture, is not accepted. Everything in this country, to be successful, we had to adapt to how white people did it. And that's from their gear, that's from their jobs, that's, the whole thing. And if you raw African, I ain't telling somebody to come to church with a dashiki on. I'm just saying that if I come to church in my culture and what's comfortable to me, that what I do on the block is not accepted culturally, and I'm right across the street from the church. And so musically and everything about our culture is just so demonized. Everything about an African-American male is intentionally demonized in this country. And we kind of do it to ourselves sometimes, It's just how do we break that cycle of us looking like villains? If four of us walking on the block together, why do we either look like a basketball team, we're going to football practice, or we're a gang. That's it. There's no in between. You know what I'm saying? And like you gotta be shocked to find out that we're educated men of God.
So we're not headed to the library if we walking together, huh?
Not even me and you, Chris. And like it's sad. It's sad because when I look at a black man, I have to do a double take to give him a fair shot. And I'm looking most of the time in the mirror. If I see guys with gold teeth, it's such an assumed demonized culture that can anything godly come from this culture? And so God has challenged us to put God in the middle of the culture, which is very challenging.
Brother, Pastor Ryan, tell me your thoughts on this, man, because you're leading a diverse group of people. And the truth be told, the church has been, how do I want to say it, reactive and not necessarily proactive on the discussion of diversity and race. What's the approach here, man? What's the conversation?
Yeah, man, I think one of the things has changed the experience. When I saw the news this morning and all I saw was a hashtag, and the sad part for me was that the moment I saw the hashtag, I already knew what happened. I ain't even have to see the story. I ain't even have to see the videotape. I didn't have to see no family. when I saw the hashtag, our culture has now trained us to say, if you see somebody's name beside a hashtag, somebody, unfortunately, has lost their life. And so for me, one of the things that I've worked really hard to do, and one of the reasons why I pastor a multi-ethnic church, is because the best way, in my opinion, is to change people's experience. So my church is 60% Black, 40% and one of the greatest stories of the glory of God being revealed is when we have white people that are part of our church have new experiences with Black young men. So I have two boys, 20 years old and 18 years old. And as some of the things have unfolded over the last couple of years, when I have white families and leaders in the community come to me and ask me, Pastor, do you feel threatened by police? Are you afraid when you're pulled over? And when they see my boys, and now instead of just seeing young Black men with J's on and hoodies, now they got names associated with those Black men. And they say, man, that could have been my pastor's son. That could have been my pastor's boys. And so proximity breeds concern and empathy. And one of the things that as the church, proximity breeds concern and empathy. When you don't have a name to attach to a culture, you don't have personal experience. And so one of the things, I try to do is say, how do we change people's experiences? Not saying that we got to become somebody else, but let me, we do groups at our church. We don't do midweek Bible study. We do small groups. And one of the reasons why I do this, because we have white families come into Black homes once a week. And what that does is that changes that person's perspective on the culture. And so an awkward but common story at my church is for an older white lady, 60 years old, to come and say, hey, Pastor Ryan, I went into a Black person's house for the first time in a small group, and it was actually nice. And so on the one hand, they're looking at me as if saying, I did this great thing. On the other hand, it lets me know that their perspective and their experience on African American culture is based off whatever experience they had before, whatever they've seen. But the only way you change that is you help change people's experiences. Now, of course, you can't change everybody's experience. You can't change everybody's perspective until they have some type of experience. I'm not saying, again, change who you are, but listen, if every Black person that you see that looks a certain way, does a certain thing, then how do we change that experience? And I agree with Pastor Ken. We definitely got to educate our community. We definitely got to catch them up a little bit earlier in their lives. But again, that's going to help change the experience of the world for the African American culture. But we can't be afraid of that proximity. We can't be afraid of doing life with people that don't look like us. One of the things I teach a lot of is God's not looking for sameness. He's looking for oneness. He never said for all of us to be the same. But how do we make sure that even though, especially in the church, we are together. Now, I believe when you have multi-ethnic churches holding government leaders and city officials accountable, it's a different type of power behind that.
Yeah. Let me ask this real quick, Dakar. Let me ask you to jump in for a moment, and then I'm gonna go right to you, James Cole, with this question as well. So, Dakar, I don't want to sugarcoat this at all, right? From a millennial standpoint, we know that people are disenfranchised for lots of different reasons, and we're not going to try to hash all those out right now, but very disenfranchised with the church, right? And so when we look at issues like this, Alton, Sterling, and some of the other, murders that have taken place, and then we see people sort of also antagonistic at the church saying, why ain't the church doing something? Why ain't the church saying something? Well, how do we merge those two issues together? Do they need to be merged? How do we respond to those that are not people of faith, but looking to see what the church should be doing or should be saying? Like, what's that whole dialogue look like?
Well, I think one of the challenges, for the church is that we pick issues that we think are important to discuss in our churches, right? So, for example, we like to gloat on the homosexual, and we like to deal with that whole issue, but we won't talk about gun violence. We won't talk about poverty in our neighborhoods, right? We won't talk about Black on Black crime, and we're not even having a conversation about what's happening in our communities. Not once, most of our churches, I hadn't seen many pastors even speak about what happened today. You know what I'm saying? Because they looking for their next Instagram picture, their next quote that they put out daily, but they don't stop and pause and reflect on what's happening today. And I think what I've learned about the church and even being a part of the church is we've taken the cross and flipped it upside down to use it to cut people versus to liberate people. So it's an interesting dynamic. And again, when you think about our culture and we think about the church, most of our, even going back to our history, everything was passed down through oral tradition. We stopped talking to one another. Every generation had their own perspective on how life was supposed to be and what the church should have been and how everybody stopped talking. And so if you look young, you became the youth pastor. You know what I'm saying? And no one really started diving into real conversations and things that we were dealing with. People don't know, even as a millennial, people don't know that we still struggle. People want to give in their churches, but not realize we having problems finding jobs after we got multiple degrees. So it's a lot of things that we haven't even tapped into or are not even having conversations about. So I think there's a great divide based on communication. We're not even having conversations with one another, definitely generationally.
And also, if I can add to that, I think it's really, especially with millennials, we're great with social media and using those tools. And I believe that, I think I said it earlier, that hashtags create awareness, conversations create change. And just to support what the car said, we're not having absolutely necessary conversations with the right people, with the right agendas. It's not just about bringing awareness. Awareness without change is nothing.
So Brother Cole, man, you've seen some politics. You've seen both the good and the bad of that. What does that look like? I mean, how do you respond to what Dakar just said?
Well, I mean, fortunately for me, a lot of what I learned about politics and a lot of what I learned about how politics intersects community, I learned in Atlanta while I was working off of Simpson Road and attending church there off of Briarcliff at Atlanta Metropolitan. So as my faith was growing and I was learning how to understand what my responsibility was within the faith and what it meant to be a defender of the faith, I was also starting to learn how this society works. And by the time I come back home to Tampa, I realized that we actually don't know. And when I say that, as a community, especially as a Christian, we don't know what we're doing. We have no idea what we're doing, especially when it comes to injustices as it relates to blacks. And it's important that we are very deliberate about that language, because we're not talking about the church being out of place across the board. And for this conversation, we're talking about the church not necessarily being relevant as it relates to what's happening to blacks. And a lot of that has to do with the notion that the model of civil rights in the 50s and 60s would be effective in what was happening in 2016 or 2015 or really in the new millennium. The bottom line is there's a return to America's approach to law enforcement, and there's a return to America's way of dealing with society issues that's looking like pre-1950, as opposed to a time in which society was moving toward, wait a minute, something has to change, and there's a culture and a community of people who want to be a part of that change. And unfortunately, I think we started seeing the non-relevance of the church in the 80s. And when I say the church, I'm talking about the Christian community that either has or should have a relationship with the black community, because it's during the 80s and 90s that really a voice started to change and resonate with young people, especially through hip hop, that said, wait a minute, there's some stuff going on out here that nobody's talking about. There's some stuff going on out here during the time that Ronald Reagan was president. There was some stuff going on during the time Clinton was president. And unfortunately, hip hop was the only one that was speaking out. And instead of the church embracing hip hop and embracing that young culture, it actually ended up being the non-Christian faith community that embraced that culture. And at the same time that this is happening, many of the people within the faith community learned how to just kind of move along as they've always moved along, wait their turn to be a deacon wait their turn to be to rise up into the Christian community, and there was no language being assigned to how ministers are going to fight injustices as it relates to Black people. And even to this day, when it's time for Blacks to fight within their own community, I think that there's a hesitation even within Black Christian leaders, because they've got to find a way to not appear to be biased. I believe a lot of Christian leaders are scared that someone's going to say that they're not really a Christian leader, because if they talk in favor of Black justice, or they talk in favor of fighting for justice, which means fighting against injustice, they're going to sound like they're not the same Christian who follows the gospel of Jesus Christ, who have obviously fought this, shared this gospel for everybody. And that's an uncomfortable place to be as a leader if you can't negotiate that, because that means that when it's time to step up and speak out, you're guarded by the perception of who you are as a leader, as opposed to be driven by justice. And there are times in which justice says, hey, this happened to this Black man because he's Black. There's a pattern going on, and we need to do something about this pattern. And unfortunately, there's been a courtship between the faith community and political leaders. There's a courtship in search for dollars as it relates to government dollars, fundings, grants. And as long as this courtship is taking place, you're going to have leaders within the faith community who are going to be quiet, or they're going to speak with safe language that doesn't call out those entities that need to be called out. And they're going to talk around issues to make sure that they don't offend those people who may be the part of the congregation, or those people who may have some influence on their next agenda of how they move the church forward. Now, the last thing I'm going to say on that is I don't really fault a lot of our young pastors. I believe the young pastors weren't handed a template of how to manage the business that has become the church from their elders, because somewhere the ball was dropped during the 70s and 80s and 90s, simply because they were riding that momentum of how the church is relevant back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And whatever they did back then, we're just going to march when it's time to march. We'll hold up some signs. We'll meet the politicians, and they'll call us quietly into their office. And after they call us quietly in their office, they'll tell us that they want to really work hard. And we'll go back to our congregation and share that that's what people are trying to do. But we won't jump out there first and make a proclamation that this is wrong. We won't jump out there first and say that these aren't just Black men who are dying in the streets. These are children of God that's dying in the street, and challenge our other white pastors to speak out. Challenge our colleagues within the faith and in the cloth to speak out and say, where are you on this? I tell you what, will you come join me? Will you help me get these other white pastors so we can hold these white officers accountable without being accused of not being sympathetic to how complicated it is to be a law enforcement officer? We know that this is politically driven a lot of times, because there's one particular party who has claimed that they are the moral majority, and they have claimed that they've got the righteousness of America on lockdown, and they only know what's best for America, and they hold the respondents, the emergency responders, as if they're part of the only group that supports them. And there's this constant rhetoric that one particular political party has this thing figured out as it relates to law enforcement, and the other political party is just so liberal. All they want to do is see that people are just become voters, so they'll give them any rights that they want. They'll give them any rights that they need. And when these parties are divided based on the death and the facts of a particular person in the street, like what is happening right now in Baton Rouge, instead of the Christian community coming together, they really fall in line based on where they stand in that political argument. And if you're a part of that political argument from the moral majority standpoint, instead of you speaking honestly, you speak safely.
That was a drop the mic, wasn't it, fellas?
Yeah.
So Pastor Canton, you and Mike, I want to pose this question to y'all, man. So when you let the rubber meet the road, and you got brothers out there, man, that's trying to make it, they ain't got multiple degrees. They oftentimes are either blue collar or trying to rub two pennies to get some money together. and they just angry, man, just mad. Like, what do we say to them? Like, what does a pastor or a church person or a person of faith say to them? I mean, part of the reason why I even wanted to have this discussion is because I feel like everybody, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, everybody's having their discussions, but that doesn't help us when we're people of faith, right? When we start thinking kingdom, how should we be operating? So what do you say, Pastor Canton, what do you say to the brothers that's mad, man, because you have a kingdom mindset, right?
Right.
What do you say to the brothers that's just mad? Mike, when you run into the fellas at the barbershop, what do you say to the brothers at the barbershop, man? That's what I'm trying to, what do we say to them?
Well, Mike, go ahead. You can start.
I mean, I think the first thing that we have to do is be all right to be angry. Like, there's a feeling that's going on that, why are you upset? This person, and I'm going to make this point to try to communicate. So if we look at the gorilla situation, little kid goes down in the embankment and that happens. So you start hearing all this stuff about the father, all the stuff about the family. The father wasn't even at the zoo, so you hear all this negative information about his background.
Indictment on his character.
Yeah. As soon as this happens, same thing happens with the situation in Louisiana. Now we're hearing about his background, things that he's done in his past. And then with the alligator situation, the little kid gets swallowed up by an alligator. I heard nothing about their family. There's no kind of conversation about their irresponsible parents for allowing this child to get out of their supervision and out of their care. So what I would communicate to brothers that this is a system. The earth is an earth system. And so if you're a kingdom-minded man, recognize that attacks on your character, attacks on the black man is a distraction. Don't get caught up in your emotional feelings when you see this. But there's definitely a double standard, injustice, and how the commentary or the narrative is communicated. Why are we bringing all this stuff into the conversation? We can't say anything about a police officer killing a black man without somebody saying something about black on black crime. Yes, black on black crime is an issue. It is, but that doesn't alleviate a police killing state. It looks like this is an authorized, trained killing machine that's coming to African Americans, males, more than anything. So I think the first thing to do is get information. Begin to understand that, okay, this is a system. There's an enemy. There's a true enemy that we have to be mindful of his tactics, and we have to be mindful of his devices. And then we have to separate our emotional feelings and start thinking about how can I communicate? Because what happens with brothers, we get, what I mean? You know what I'm saying? No, we don't. We don't clearly hear what you are trying to discuss. So we got to figure out what is the thing that we want people to understand about the conversation. Like, what's the issue? And then once we are able to be clear about that, and we need to come together. We need synergy. We need brothers that are in different areas, and we hear things and we communicate. And we say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That brother aptly describes what I'm trying to say. I know it's on the inside, but I can't really audibly communicate it. So I think one of the frustrations of brothers at the barbershop, you can speak freely at the barbershop, but then you get into an argument with somebody on Twitter or Facebook, and they're asking about, well, show me an example, and they make all these, and when did you do that, and when it was, and you didn't, and people just get frustrated, and it's just like, we're not having a conversation. You're just trying to overpower me with your point of view.
Hey, Mike, it's interesting that you use the barbershop thing. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's interesting the barbershop thing because, all of us on this video chat right now, we all have been in barbershops, man, and there's like a code, right? Like all brothers know there's like an indoctrination at the barbershop because you can get heated. People can get loud, like pointing fingers. Most barbershops don't really allow the cussing no more. But I mean, it get like almost gangster. So if a person walk in and they don't know what's going on, they're going to be scared. but all of us know that everybody gonna share their opinion, and then before you walk out that door, everybody gonna dap up and like, man, I'll see you next week.
We're good. We're all good. And I don't know if there's a public opportunity for brothers to communicate like that without being intimidating or aggressive. I was running this morning. I run the dam in my city. I'm running. I'm in running attire. I'm running, and it's two white women, and they saw me. I was behind the woman. I'm running. They're walking. At some point, I'm gonna pass you. You should know that I'm there. I get up beside the woman. Excuse me, man. She almost jumped out of her skin. Like she jumped like she didn't know she was on a public setting at 7 o'clock in the morning.
This your private sidewalk.
She jumped like it was midnight in a dark alley, and I had a hoodie and a gun, and I'm like, and I'm feeling crazy for the rest of the day because this white woman almost leaped off the bridge because I ran. I said, excuse me. I said, excuse. I just didn't just show up, big black man. I said, excuse me, and she, I just kept on running. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we carry. And it's just like, I just had to get that off my chest. I forgot that it even happened. Why did the woman jump? So that's the stuff brothers up against.
I'm sorry, man, for bringing that back up. I'm sorry, man.
Hey, I was able to get off my chest. I might have said something crazy to my wife tonight. She'd be like,
I feel you, brother, on that one. I feel you. I pastor a church full of frustrated men, and who can't articulate, who's not educated. A lot of my guys did time. Just about all my guys did time. We have about a couple of hundred to show up, and so we're just getting together. And what God is teaching me is like they don't have the mental capacity to learn right now, or even the appetite to learn all of the principles of the kingdom. And so they don't have it. Like they don't even have a discipline. They don't even have a desire yet. So what is stronger than education? Culture. Culture says you could go culture versus education. Now this is nothing against nobody else. It's just what I'm understanding, that when you can't sit somebody down to teach them something and they comprehend because they dropped out in 7th grade, 6th grade, or all they know is street terms. They can't do math, but they can sure enough tell you the street value on a gram of cocaine. And so when you're talking to people like that, you have to create what we're creating, the culture. So what does that mean? It's easier to learn Spanish in Spain than it is to learn in a Spanish class, because around you have to survive in the culture. If you don't know Spain, you're not gonna know how to order your food. You're not gonna know how to communicate with the people. So the culture kind of forces you to learn what it's all about, and that's what we're trying to create at the church. That when they come up there, smelling like weed, tattoos everywhere. I mean, we got it all. There's a culture of the kingdom that they experience. One thing is you got to kind of give them pardon and give them something that they didn't deserve. What does that mean? Sometimes they're on the rap team and they couldn't go through the steps of being, going through 9 weeks of Holy Ghost, psalmist training. They just need to be kind of thrown in the culture, and they learn the culture as they go. And so what I'm learning is with this new type of the Christian guys that's coming, that's being converted, that they want to be able to do something without the training. And I do know that sometimes we I come from Kojic, old school church. My mama had me in church all the time. And, you went through a process before you were put in a position. You went through a process, but nowadays God is telling me to put them in the position and let being there be their process. Let them take ownership of something and let them be in the culture of the kingdom. One of the guys that I mentor now, his name is Antonio. He's been running with me for the last 2 or 3 years. He did 7 years in prison, and man, you know, he know that I did. He knew that I did music. I was a Christian for a long time, but it wasn't until he seen certain things. You know, he went on a couple trips and he started living the lifestyle. He started getting indoctrinated in the culture till he started saying, "Oh, I get it. And so I think sometimes for those guys who don't really, who you can't teach, I'm like, man, you can't teach some of these guys. They got ADD. They be walking around church. You keep the music loud and playing. You got to do stuff for ADD people sometimes, you know, and trying to pastor a gangster, goon, uneducated, frustrated generation, you know. And I think we gotta we just create the culture for them, you know. And that's kind of what we've been practicing on, you know. So y'all pray for me on that, because you got guys that really love God, but they don't know how to articulate it, you know, and they get frustrated. They get frustrated when they don't do it like other people. I'm like, you don't have to do it like other people. You do it how God give you to do it, you know, and settle people down and love on them. And a lot of times, man, these guys just are not having conversations with people that love them. You know, they're just frustrated. They vent and they go out and they do things. So this is helpful, though. This conversation right here is a start.
Yeah. Dakar, let me flip the script for a moment, because Pastor Canton talked about, you know, the guys that had to do some time, the guys that you know, they ain't got the culture, they learning the culture, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to flip it for a moment and say, okay, so Dakar, you an HBCU grad, you got multiple degrees. Your wife is a physician. You know, you've been able to be, in my grandmama's words, you've been highfalutin at points, right? You've been running in some good circles. So in those middle to high income spaces where there's still people that look like us, what are they saying? Is there any frustration, or are they disconnected? Pastor Ryan talked about proximity. Do they feel like, you know, that's another group of black people, that ain't us? Like, what's the feeling there?
No, I think there's still a sense of hurt and pain in those spaces as well. Despite, you know, having multiple degrees and et cetera, whoever I'm connected to. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in Mechanicsville. I went to Dunbar Elementary School. You know what I'm saying? I grew up right across the street from my church. Matter of fact, my church was behind me. One of the stories I tell is I grew up in a community where we call it the Plaza. The Plaza, in my opinion, was probably the biggest drug block in Atlanta for me growing up, where I can look at our apartments and see the dope boys on that street, right? So the dope boys was what I was attracted to. The church was behind me, so it was an isolated institution operating in its own silos. So in retrospect, the church has still been silent because I could never see the church, right? But I was also able to see, you know what I'm saying, what I was attracted to. I saw the dope boys. So now, despite all of that, I was able to, you know, go to Morehouse and graduate and go to Vandy or whatever and get my degree. But there's still a sense of pain, if not more pain, because I recognize more so than ever that I'm still living under a shadow. Even with an education, I'm living more under a shadow than I was when I didn't have the education, because now I'm really a threat. So what happens is we see what's happening. They'll try to expose, or they're threatened by what's right with you, so they'll try to expose what's wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? So that's why when these guys are being murdered, these guys are being killed, you're seeing them go right at, okay, he's a sex offender, or he was a bad daddy, or he's behind on child support, or et cetera, because they truthfully, our greatness is always under surveillance. And that's the frustration. You know what I'm saying? Our greatness is always under surveillance. They're always threatened by us. You know, and I'm just frustrated. I'm more militant right now than I am, you know, trying to offer some grace. You know what I'm saying? I'm really on that space where I'm like, you know, I'm kind of like Huey and them. Like, we need to just be armed. We need to go take back our communities. We need to stand out there in front of the convenience store. If my brother want to sell CDs, let him sell CDs. If he want to sell cigarettes, let him sell cigarettes. That's where I'm at with it. And I dare you to walk up on us. I dare you walk up on us. Because when I'm at Cracker Barrel in Nashville, I see these white boys walking in there with their pistols, and they sitting down there eating. I want to walk in Cracker Barrel with my pistol, but I'm threatened. But I'm a threat, though, if I walk in Cracker Barrel and I got my pistol.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do, but we know these white boys, they crazy. They coming in movie theaters. They doing everything they want to do, but we can't. The man selling CDs and all of a sudden he dead. Come on. I don't hear nobody he should have got down. No, he shouldn't have got down. He's minding his own business. You know what I'm saying? I'm just frustrated. So I think, again, to sum that up, I think at the end of the day, I think that there's still some pain from middle class. Now they may not discuss it, right? Because, again, if you watch the OJ documentary, we saw where that brother was, right, during that period when he thought he had arrived. But I think there's still some people that sitting out there. They may not discuss it, but I guarantee you they're sending pain. Because at the end of the day, it could have been their son. We can't divorce ourselves from black pain, period. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. So let me say, first of all, you know, I think, man, this is so healthy to me for us to even be able to jump on here and have this dialogue. I said to y'all when I reached out to you, I didn't feel like we were going to try to solve the world, but I felt like, man, we needed to try to be able to put some framework, some articulation to brothers who are brothers of faith, who understand the kingdom, but are still brothers and understand that, like Mike said, and like Pastor Ryan said, okay, it's okay to be angry. You're not ungodly. You're not going to lose your anointing or your favor because you get angry, right? You do need to manage your emotions and filter your frustration. And I think what Pastor Ryan said inherently is, man, we're not going to ignore this elephant in the room. We're going to deal with it because I'm going to help create an experience for you to see that probably most of your assumptions are wrong, right? So, you know, there was something in me that moved. I saw Dakar's face. I saw Canton's face when the lady, you used the testimony and said that one of your members said, oh, yeah, I went to one of the black people's house and it was actually nice, as if to say, like, it's not going to be nice, you know? So like really dealing with this stuff head on. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is, and a number of you all said it, so we got all this social media, but man, ain't no conversations happening. Right? We got all of this technology, but where are the real conversations taking place? So I think that's one of the takeaways for anybody that may be watching this later on you, because I'm gonna throw this on YouTube. But man, there's got to be some healthy conversations. I think one of the dynamics that we haven't addressed, and James Cole, I thought you were getting ready to go there, and you went another direction. But one of the conversations that we gotta feel at some point we gotta address is that there is also a generational divide within the black community. Race deals with this. Dakar, you talked about a number of issues that we get on a soapbox issue. We don't address some of the others. Pastor Canton, you're pastoring one generation, and you've gotten resistance from those in the older generation that are churched. You were a couple months ago, you were kicked out of a church because of the kind of music that y'all have. Cole, you are kind of a bridge builder between an older generation and a younger generation. So what's the answer there, man? What's the conversation look like there? And I want to be sensitive to time as well, because we've already been on here for right at about 45 minutes. So I want to be sensitive to that. But am I making sense?
You're making perfect sense. And I'm gonna try to address that real quick. But before I lose time, I want to make sure I want to offer one recommendation for the gentleman on the call to consider. If you've already considered this, then great. One of the things that we can do is recognize, even though social media is going to be impactful, at most what social media is going to do is allow people to recognize that they are feeling very similar, and it's going to allow people to feel like they are part of the frustration. But men who have an opportunity to be have an influence on leaders in your community, or people who can influence a large group of people, what we have to do is use that influence to go to those who are decision makers. And one thing I recommend is take this video footage, capture it. If you need me to, I can get it to Pastor Christopher. I've already captured it so that you can have it in an MP4 form, so that you can go to leaders and repeat what's happening right now. But let's not repeat it amongst our peers. You want to find people who are chief of police. You want to find people who are the sheriff. You want to find people who are majors, people who are decision makers within law enforcement. Sit them down and say, look, I want to talk to you, along with people who are in organizations, and say, we're going to look at this video together, and I want to know where you stand on this video. I don't want to wait until this happens in my neighborhood. I don't want to wait until someone gets shot from my church. I want to know now, when you see this video, what do you see? And give them an opportunity to show you who they are. Then hold them accountable. Hold them accountable to what they say.
How do we hold them accountable? Because because as when Dakar talked about his raw emotions, one of my frustrations is I feel like systematically, you know, I'm a preacher of the gospel. I believe in hope. I believe that God is a God of hope. I'm gonna maintain that hope. I'm gonna fight to maintain that hope. But there's almost a sense of helplessness with man, how do I say this? There's almost like this sense of helplessness because the system, this is not just one act, this is a system, because all of those names that I read at the beginning of this call, there is no indictment. There is no indictment. Every single one of them, when there is video evidence, then you got a person like your boy that was on the, I'm drawing a blank right now, but he had the amazing speech, Williams, and Jesse Williams, and now you got people saying that his speech
for his job, and that they want to get him fired from his job. So then now he's on the hot seat with culture, right? So I'm saying, man, like, is that a sanitized approach? Is that like real?
I'll give you one example. Help me a little bit. And I'll make it quick. I started with the idea, because we are in position of leadership and influence, which means that we have to mobilize those who we have influence with and those who we are in leadership with. We have to mobilize them in a way that speaks truth to power, but empowers them to understand. When earlier when the brother was talking about the culture, just as we can identify with the culture that some of our members are coming from, we've got to be able to understand the American capitalistic culture that's driven by money and it is driven by the influence of how people spend their dollar. And I'm gonna make this real quick. The tobacco industry was one of the biggest giants in America. But once there was a concentrated and concerted campaign, not just around the law, but around shutting down certain pockets of America as it relates to education on what tobacco was, they're still a giant. But a culture was changed. Language was put on products that you never thought was going to be put before, because there was mobilization. There was a mobilization of all generations, and it was taken straight to the lawmakers. It was taken in such a way where, okay, you don't want to pass this bill, I guarantee you won't get elected anymore. What we've got to be able to do is recognize, where do we fit? What does my congregation fit in the structure of how money moves in this country, and how the political influence of how money moves in this country works? First, we got to be able to take inventory on that. Just in our district, in our neighborhood, wherever our sphere of influence is, if we can just get better at doing that, we'll meet the brother down the street based on where his influence is. We'll meet the ministry across the tracks based on where their influence is. But we got to be able to know where our influence is as it relates to capitalism, and as it relates to how politics dances around the idea that people want to make money. Because ultimately, that's the only thing that's going to get somebody indicted. The fact that somebody wants to get reelected, and they need funding to get reelected, and the only way there's going to be funding is if people are sponsoring that campaign. And if you're able to influence the sponsors, we're not going to patronize your business anymore if you sponsor somebody like that who ain't doing nothing. We're not going to patronize anything that your products do as long as you're making money and donations to that business. We'll go over here and support this business. There's an economic component in it, but we have to understand that that component is what it is.
Let me ask this question real quick to the brothers real quick. So I heard somebody earlier say, I think it was on C-SPAN, that really the solution to this, I'm going to throw this out and then I want to hear y'all's reactions, that part of the solution to all of this is not the Black Lives Matter movement or the commentators or whatever. The real solution to these killings is actually police of integrity starting to stand up. What do y'all think about that?
No, I think Pastor Cole hit it on the head.
Pastor Cole.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if he was a pastor or not. James Cole. I'm sorry. I think it's about money. That's it. Back in the day, when Martin Luther King and when they marched, the bus boycott, they was losing millions and millions every week because the black people would not ride the bus. And that march was to let them know that we were still not going to ride your bus. And so even back in the day, because I went to Morehouse as well, I asked some of the whole old heads what was that like, you know, some of the ones that I could get to, and they actually would stand in front of some of those black people who almost gave in and got on them buses. And so they made that thing happen, and it attacked them economically till they had to make a change, or that bus company was gonna fold. And so when we do Black Lives Matter, when we do all our campaigns, it's great, but it doesn't cause change because you're not attacking the American way, which is the dollar. You're not attacking the dollar. If you don't attack the dollar, I ain't getting out there walking with y'all, because that ain't going to do nothing. All they're going to do is put some police out there, wait till you get tired and go home, and that's it. If you don't attack the dollar, nothing happens in America. And so what we have to do is figure out a way to attack the dollar, whichever that's the only way things are going to change here. And so we got to figure out what strategic thing that we need to attack. And the other thing is we have to bring the spirit of influence back to the church. A lot of times the pastor don't want to talk politics because he don't want to offend any of the members. And so he don't want to sway either way. So therefore, the strength that the pastor has to influence the members to make change, he don't want to use it because he don't want to mess up that membership. And so I think that's where we are. You know, when you talk about leaders that can make change, what do we attack? You know, because as soon as you start messing with somebody's money, folks start changing stuff real quick. They start switching speeches. They start throwing folk under the bus, and that's how you're gonna do it here in America. That's just the way it is. So I don't know if it's the guns. You know, what do you do? Gun people are not changing that because they know they're selling ammo, they're selling pistols. That money they're gonna make. So they could just sit there with their arms folded. But as soon as somebody toes are stepped on and they start losing money quickly and those stocks start dropping, then them laws start changing.
Brothers, what y'all think? Y'all think the police are part of this? Y'all agree with the money side of this? What's your reaction to that?
I think, and I let Brooks speak, but I think that police are a huge problem. Evil white men managing communities. You have these evil white police officers who they view us as a threat. They're intimidated by our greatness. I think we need to start there. I think that's one of the places I think we need to demand or make some demands that we need to, just like they do intensive background checks. We know if these folks are racist or not. You know, when you work with them, these guys, they need to snitch on each other. They know who's who and who's saying what when they're in these cop cars. I think we need to really deal with the fact that hate is a real issue. Hate is a problem. They hate us. That's really when you see it when they pull us over. I was riding out in Duluth and a guy stopped me. I got a decent car. The police officer stopped me because he said I look lost. My windows are tinted. I don't even know how you can see that I look lost. Because I was in Duluth, right? I'm in Duluth. I get pulled over and I argued with him. Like I wasn't afraid of him, but I want to let him know there's no way.
Dakar, real quick. So, you know, people from all over the world, all over the country may be watching this. Give us a context for Duluth. They may not know what Duluth is.
Well, I'm not as familiar. And Cole, you may be able to speak to this, or can. I'm not too familiar with Duluth. I don't really hang out there. There's 85. That ain't my area.
Duluth got its money out there. It's not a lot of us.
It's a typical suburb.
Yeah.
Outside the urban center.
Right. It's a place I just don't hang out in. You know, it's Gwinnett County. That's just not my spot. It's just not an area that but one of my buddies got a nice crib out there and I was going to visit him. And once I started telling him I was familiar with the community, then he offered to assist me in my directions as if I was lost. You know, but I told him I wasn't lost. I knew where I was going. He just pulled me over. But I think again, they don't respect us. I genuinely believe that white police officers, they do not respect black men. They don't, even those that work with them.
It's you know, I love you, Dakari. It's interesting to me, this whole video call, and that's why I had you on. I mean, that's why I had all of you guys on, because everybody's gonna bring a different level of conversation. Dakari has been the one saying it's us versus them. They don't, and us, and you know, so that's I think that's an interesting dynamic. Pastor Ryan,
where I met with I wasn't there before, but I've come to that place where that's just where I am right now, and that may change over the next 2 to 3 weeks or what have you, but that's just where I am. I feel like there is an attack on black male bodies, black women bodies. There's an attack on our people. And I'm seeing it that is from white male police officers. They have a problem with us. They just genuinely have a problem with us. We're not respected by them.
I feel like they always did though, bro. I feel like they just showing it. I feel like they ain't nothing changed. Like they've been shooting us for the past 50 years. You know, this is not new. It's just that they're showing it now on social media.
Yeah, I saw Pastor Cantor. To your point, I saw a picture this morning that had had an African American male. You couldn't see his face. It was sort of just the image of the African American male. You could tell it was African American male. One side, it had three images, right? One image had a chains where you could see one chain around his neck and then the chains around his arm. The middle image had a noose, like a rope, and then the third image had bullet holes in the side of the shoulder. And I thought that was an interesting image or interesting imagery of transition in our historical context. To your point, Pastor Ryan, talk to me. You look like you're burning at the burning over there.
No, man. No, I think the police are an issue. I think it's very difficult to, and I know one of the things I hate to be generalized in any particular group for any reason. I'm not saying that every particular white officer is bad or as Dakari's words, are evil. And I've had terrible experiences in my years. I think accountability, we got to figure out a way to hold police officers accountable in different ways, whether it's after the fact or in their training, their research, how they handle them, how they treat them. I think when you have people policing safety, that group should be questioned and studied and qualified higher than anybody else. Anybody that can legally carry a weapon and pull it out on somebody whenever they want, that group must be held accountable to a different level than anybody else, in my personal opinion. I think if you don't do that, you really allow hate to rise up, and really people can get on the law enforcement just to kind of exercise their hatred towards another group. If I got a hatred towards a group and I say, hey, where can I go to exercise this hate or frustration? Some people do it on social media with their words, but if you have the skill set, the background, the experience to get on law enforcement and exercise it that way, then you will. You absolutely will. I think one of the things that we have to understand also, man, that hate is birthed out of really self-love. When you love yourself so much that you'll hurt somebody else, that's where hate comes from. And I think one of the things that I've always prayed for as a pastor, we can talk about the police officers and these people, city officials, but at the end of the day, how do we change it? How do we change it? So again, I think the accountability, if the money is the issue, where that's kind of leading and heading this area, then we got to attack that. But at the end of the day, I think really there's got to be more accountability, because there had to have been, we all know there's a better way to have handled all of these situations. Every single situation, it could have been handled a much different way. So one of my questions is it training? Is it how we're equipping people to handle each situation? Is this what you're taught to do? Because it can't be the only way. Death should not be the first response.
Yeah. And let me do this real quick. We've been going at this now for right at about 56 minutes. I know Pastor Canton's got to go because he's got some folks waiting on him. Here's what I want to do, because we didn't even scratch the surface at dealing with the sin issue and spiritual warfare. Any of those other dynamics as a part of all this discussion. Here's what I want to do, and I'm gonna start with Pastor Canton. After you make your remarks, Pastor Canton, if you want to jump off, you can. But I'm gonna give everybody 30 seconds to wrap up. 30-second comment closure. Anybody that's been watching this.
I think this is actually it.
By the way, Pastor Ryan, I'm sorry.
I think what we're doing is it. Biblical mathematics, whether it's 2 or 3. I just feel like if we just keep doing this, seeing brothers talk, something will come out of it. Somebody have some ideas. I think that this is the start of. This is how you start, because we start getting the ideas, iron sharpening iron, and we start doing these things in our neighborhood. But if we don't talk, nothing's gonna happen.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, love y'all, man. Thank y'all.
Love you, man.
All
Thank
right,
you.
man.
Mike, give it to me.
Yeah, I definitely believe that brothers need to not be an island. Man, I think we all are challenged with many of the same challenges, whether it's family, whether it's career, whether it's raising children, trying to be successful, trying to manifest our greatness. We need to be connected. We need to be connected with one another. We need to be exerting our influence. We need to have conversations, not only like what James said, not only with peers, but with decision makers. We know people. We know folks that have the ability to make change. And so we need to exert our influence on every level, whether it's be our sons and people that we mentor. We show them how to navigate this system, but we also need to reach to the decision makers and folks to say, hey, look, this is my perspective. You know me. I'm not a name on a hashtag. You know who I am. You've had relationship with me. These are my concerns. And this is how I see things. And now you are able to put a face, a reference point to an issue.
That's great, Mike. Thank you, man. Brother James, talk to me.
Well, first of all, thanks for doing this, man. I don't want to forget to thank you later on, but thank you for doing this. There are a couple of truths that we have to be aware of, I think, moving forward, and I hope everybody can consider taking this with them. And that's one, that everyone who goes into law enforcement, they have made a choice that they want to fight crime, right? They want to do good by the community, and they want to be an agent for justice, and they want to fight crime. Once we understand that truth, the second truth that we have to understand is since 1916, with the movie The Birth of a Nation, which was the first motion picture in this country, the face of the criminal has been the face of a black man. And because of that ideology that has been passed forward for generations, whether they know that they have injustice in their heart, their assumption is that if it's a black male, he is a criminal with evil intent. Until that psychology is addressed, there's no telling what we're dealing with. And when you put in a hair trigger situation, you're going to err on the side of, I got to protect myself from that criminal, that deviant who I've been trained to believe is a criminal and a deviant.
He's just trying to run, man. He's just trying to run.
Yeah. And we know. And the last thing, if an economic momentum, and if we're to penetrate the economy of society in order to change this, what better community than the Christian community, a community of faith, a community of understanding fasting, sacrifice, prayer? What better community to lead the way to say, you know what, I'll make a sacrifice on this end if that's what we've got to do to change these conditions on this end. If I got to go without, I will go without. And I think we have the ability through relationships to encourage other brothers and sisters to come on board. We just got to figure out where's going to be the first step where we're going to do what we've got to do, no different than what they did in South Africa. And what America did to help even South Africa come on board when we put pressure on corporations to say, y'all going to have to change your ways.
Wow. Dakar, give it to me.
Well, first, I want to say this. Thank you for the opportunity. It is a pleasure to be on here with these great thinkers. The other thing is, I wasn't trying to generalize all white male police officers. I was dealing with.
Oh man, we was giving you a hard time because.
What I'm saying is, evil white male police officers. Those that these are the ones we've seen in the news. This is not something I'm making up. These are guys that are driven by hate for a particular race. But also, I want to say, I don't blame our African-American brothers for being black. We're black, unapologetically black. This is who we are. And what I would just say to the brothers that are watching this, I say, continue to execute your responsibilities as a man and exercise your greatness daily. That's my word.
That's what's up.
Man, that's powerful. Pastor Ryan, I'm going to get a benediction, but I'm going to give you the first benediction.
Oh, man. Matthew 5:9 says, blessed are the peacemakers. I think we got to make sure at the end of the day, as representatives of Jesus Christ, that we pursue justice in every area. I think Jesus was always for justice. at the same time, it had to be considered with being peacemakers. The Bible says, Jesus says, because those will be called the sons of God. And I think as African-American men, as followers of Christ, those things have to be continued to be in front of us. I think we got to find the people of influence. If you never, in the words, I think the great theologian Sean Carter, first you grab their ears, then you grab their heart. And I think if we're going to influence our culture, it's going to take not just our conversations with one another, but we got to have the conversations with the people that write the checks. We got to have a conversation with the people with the influence. And I think, just me, I guess, since I'm a personal advocate of the multi-ethnic church, I think what better place than to do that than the church. There's a power when it's not just us. I believe civil rights didn't just happen because of just African Americans. There were people that did not look like us that at some point decided to be advocates, whether it was for the cause of financial gain or not. It's got to be more than just the Black community. We have to be sure to embrace and not be afraid to engage people that don't just look like us, because the body of Christ is way bigger than any cultural community.
Man, that's good. So I want to say, man, as much as all of y'all said thank you to me, man, I want to say thank you to you guys. Some of y'all rearranged stuff, man, to make this happen. And everybody's got busy schedules, families, man. And then all of us got church tonight. Most of us have church tonight. Some of y'all unsaved, and y'all got church on Tuesday night.
Yeah, on Tuesday.
Or went to noonday.
I'm
having Bible study right now.
Backsliders.
Heathens.
It's all in love, but I say that jokingly, but I'm very serious to say, man, every single one of y'all, even Ed Stevens was having some technical issues, and I wanted him to be able to say some things, but he was having some technology issues. Pastor Canton had to jump off, but every single time I talk to any one of you all individually, you all are a blessing to me, man, and I knew that getting all of y'all on the line together would be able to help us to articulate some things from a biblical, wise, practical standpoint that I think our culture doesn't have, man. Our culture, it's not, people who are people of faith right now are leaning on people who are not of faith to articulate what we should be doing. And that's not healthy. And so thank God for technology, because we can now lend our voices and not only have to rely on C-SPAN or CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever the case may be. As Pastor Ryan said, no one culture has a lock on the anointing. But I believe that God gives us the grace that we need, the wisdom and insight that we need as we all come together. This really was a barbershop conversation for a few moments where we can just kind of chop it up, ham it up a little bit. The only thing I'm going to close out with saying this, man, and for anybody that may be watching this, and I didn't poll these brothers, I know that they're going to agree with this statement when I make it, is that we've got to change the narrative of how we devalue lives, period. We are devaluing lives. And people can talk about, the character of the deceased. They can talk about the character of the officers, and officers aren't racist, or they are not racist. They can talk about the role of the church. We can talk about all of that. But what we all have to agree on is that lives are being lost that should not be lost. Point blank, period. Lives are being lost. Somebody doesn't have their father going home with them tonight. Somebody doesn't have their husband laying down with them. Somebody doesn't have their son or their nephew at the family reunion, right? And I'm getting a little teary-eyed even saying it. But somebody is burying a family member and they should not be. That's the bottom line. And if you are white or black or Hispanic or Asian or mixed or whatever your race is, you gotta get to a place where your heart is soft enough where you look at somebody and say, man, somebody is being buried right now that shouldn't be. That's the bottom line, right? Somebody is being buried right now that shouldn't be. And until you get to that place, you're not even really ready to even have these kinds of conversations, right? So I think we all agree with that at least. And I'm going to stop there, man. This has been a great conversation. I love you guys. And, hey, man, we got to figure out what the next step is. It's got to be another one somewhere. But in the meantime, we're going to pray. We're going to talk it out. We're going to grab some other brothers. We're going to work it through, and we're going to keep pressing ahead.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, brothers.
Yeah, man.
All right, take care.